Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get More Clients. I'm your host, Lynn Whitbeck. Business owners and entrepreneurs hire me to ignite winning sales because most are chasing down leads, lack client retention, conversion, and profits. The mission of this show is to educate, inspire, and motivate women and men around the world to build a robust sales strategy to get more clients because most can't get more clients and haven't a clue why. You'll learn to transform thinking to the client's perspective, eliminate the lengthy, chaotic sales cycle to ignite your sales and unleash lasting profits. You'll also have the opportunity to connect with me further to see how I can support you beyond today. So I had my talk already. The slides were done. I had provided a PDF to the association. I had handouts ready to go. And everything seemed to be just exactly right. Except that, well, here I was in the room and I was evaluating the space and how everything was going to work. I was going to be having to bend over backwards to hit the scroll for the next slide, which was a little bit distracting, right? And I had to sort of think about that. Well, how was I going to move that in? And my talk had changed from a 45-minute presentation to 20 minutes. Yeah, well, okay, I talk fast. So that part, I was like, okay, I've got this. I can speak to the slides. I know what the content is. I know it really well. And I'll just be able to go through and flow through this. And then as I started and went through, I had, of course, those were a couple potholes, things that I could overcome. But I would have people stop me because they wanted to know more. They're asking questions. It was not a large group. It was 20 people who were there live. There were also people virtually. And so that would sort of get me distracted, right? A little bit off track. So one thing I had done, which is a really great idea, is I had those 3x5 cards in my hand. They were numbered. I only wrote on one side, and I would move it to the next card when I had that done. Now, I didn't have a lot of cards. I had 10 cards total. So it was easy to keep track of them and sort of move them to the next one. So that was a tool that I used to help me in that moment. And then, of course, we get distracted because people were asking questions live within the presentation. And I needed to then bend over and turn around and hit the slide to the next. And I was watching this like clock with the timing. So as I went through, got the finished, I sort of wrapped up the presentation. So I'd be wrapping up on time and then to open it up for formal Q&A. And I'm looking back today, because I did this actually just this weekend. There are a couple things. One, I should have set expectations from the very beginning by saying, let's hold the questions to the very end. We're going to have time for Q&A. Just jot down your question and we're going to come back to it. That way we can get through the material and everyone can get the bountiful information I'm going to provide, right? So I could have set expectations. Now, the other thing is I could have asked for a volunteer to hit the clicker. But I think without the distraction of people asking me questions in the moment, that part would have been okay. So you always need to plan for these things. So last week, I shared why speakers who try new things gain big rewards. Today, I will be sharing 8 must-haves to boost your confidence when presenting. Now you see how that story ties in. So planning your presentation, talk, or summit appearance is vital for your confidence, assurance, and success. When you're prepared and thought through all the angles, it's also much easier to pivot when something is out of whack. By the end of today's show, you will know how to identify the items on your presentation roadmap, what outliers you need to include to eliminate last-minute stress and anguish, and your ultimate checklist to ensure a rockstar performance. A roadmap provides a visual of your ultimate destination while digging into the details of the journey to eliminate the potholes to avoid. It also provides the hidden gems that make your experience a delight. And whatever type of presentation, you shine brightly and you're having fun. Let's talk about the presentation roadmap. Your success of the presentation, it depends greatly on your preparation. And I sort of covered several things in there. I knew my material. I had it down. I sort of evaluated the room and the space in there. I had notes that were on my 3x5 cards. So I only had a small group of them. I wasn't going to be reading them. They were just simply prompts, basically for that corresponded to the slides. So when you think about that and put that together, when something goes sideways or a little bit off, you're able to respond much easier. It's not a reaction, it's a response. You can take that moment, a powerful pause, to evaluate, assess, and then have a plan forward. So the following checklist is going to provide a foundation for you when you're creating a focused presentation to address and answer your client's why with value and impact. I want you to use this checklist for each client presentation. Everything that you create, whether it's a new presentation, a brand new piece, or it's a proposal that you're presenting to your client. But I want you to really take that step back and begin by creating a fresh client-specific, think like the client and motivation and emotions. Go through those episodes, go through that work for each new presentation. So this is going to enable you to keep your objectives in alignment with your client's perspective when constructing your presentation. So what about those outliers, potholes, and hidden gems? Well, I shared some of those. And so there's all kinds of different outliers, right? The weather could be uncooperative. I mean, especially if you're trying to drive somewhere and you've got materials you have to carry in and it's like a monsoon or something, right? Or it could completely mess up traffic. So just checking before you leave, if you're physically going somewhere, what's happening, check your Google or Apple Maps, get an estimate, and make sure that you're going to have plenty of time to get there. Planning ahead and arriving ahead makes a huge difference, especially for your stress level. And if you're presenting virtually, double check that everything's going well with your internet service, do a quick speed check, and just so that once again, everything's good. It's all going to be A+. Now, what about those potholes? Well, I talked about a little of those, right? I had interruptions during my presentation. I failed to set the expectation and direct the audience for that. Now, this was a more casual presentation and setting, but even so, that would have been useful. Now, if there's something else that could happen, I don't know if this has ever happened to you because it's happened to me, but either the file is corrupted that I had provided, it's not working. So I always make sure that I put my presentation on 2 different flash drives, not one, but 2 different flash drives. And I have it as the actual presentation format. This is when I'm using a slide deck. And it's something that universally people would have, like PowerPoint. And then I've also saved it as a PDF because everybody can click through the pages of a PDF. And you don't need the fancy transitions and all that kind of stuff. You really don't. Now, if you're going to show a video or something like that, then you need to have that embedded or have another window ready. All right. What about if you've got handouts and they don't show up, or you are walking through that rain in the monsoon? Well, make sure you've got them in a plastic, one of those giant plastic Ziploc bags so that they'll make it into the building okay. But that's a great way to let the audience know that if they want to get a process map or a checklist or a handout to provide you with your contact information, or that you're going to have business cards in the back of the room, they can grab one and send you an email that says, I want the checklist, and that you'll go ahead and get that to them. And of course, if you've truly planned ahead, you're going to have that piece actually on your website as a lead magnet. Woohoo! And what are the hidden gems? Wearing comfortable clothes and shoes. For goodness sakes, don't be wearing something that you're very uncomfortable in, that's constricting your breathing, or your shoes hurt so bad that that's all you can think about. And as much as possible, be well rested. Make sure you've eaten something. Don't go up there and not have eaten something that's, like super spicy or super full, but have eaten something so that you're feeling good, right? You're taking care of your body, to yourself. And your smile, your enthusiasm, your energy. Those are the real hidden gems. Let's start with the ultimate checklist. So, the most important factor is the purpose of the presentation. The purpose of the presentation. So let's answer these questions. What is the purpose of the presentation? What are the goals of the presentation? What are the client or prospect goals? The audience, what are their goals of the presentation? What critical facets have you identified when thinking like your client, like the audience? What have you illuminated when identifying your client's current motivations and emotions? So if they've never known you, there's going to be a little bit different motivations and emotions, right? If they've gotten to know you, depending on the setting, then those are going to be different. Now, what client information have you gathered, or information about the audience, including if you're working with directly with prospects or clients, your discovery questions and the client's answers? What value statements should you include in the presentation? Now, we have a whole episode on value statements, so go back and tune that in, because you want to connect the benefits you provide with so the client can. All right? Ultimately, that is your purpose, is to provide that rocking value and make that connection, bridging the gap from where they are to where they want to be. Now, what about the location of your presentation? Is it in person or virtual? So let's go through both of these. And we're going to start with a checklist for physical on-site presentations. So how is the room or space configured? Now, this is something that you definitely have to think about, so that you can make sure that you're speaking to everyone in the audience. Are you going to have to climb up on stage? Are you going to have to be turning around to click through your presentation? What's happening there? How can you use the space effectively for your presentation? Being able to walk, back and forth. So if you're in a large stage, having that mic that you can walk back and forth, or are you going to be sort of tied to a podium? Or in a small setting tied to a more limited space, you can still use body language and body movements to create some energy. So what type of engagement will facilitate the space? So that's what you want to be thinking about. Now, let's talk about tech. And that is also about the space of your presentation. What are the equipment requirements? So if you were bringing your computer and plugging it in, are you going to need a computer? Are you going to need your mouse? Are you going to need a projector? Are you going to need adapters? I mean, if you're going into someone else's setting, maybe you need to bring all these things. Who knows? Most likely not, but you need to check that out. Do you have all the right cables? Do you have a wireless remote presenter, so like a clicker, right? That's going to save you a whole bunch. So you don't have to turn around backwards and bend down to hit the next slide. Have you put your presentation backups on more than one flash drive? You have an extension cord. Yes, an extension cord in case you need some extra power. And I would definitely duct tape so that you don't trip over it when you're walking around the stage. Just think about all those different things. Where are the electrical outlets? Are you able to test your equipment capability and connectivity ahead of the time? And do you have the ability to arrive early for setup? So this is definitely important when you're doing a one-off presentation. It's not part of a big conference or event. Those are things that you can do ahead of time. And what other considerations are needed specifically for this space? Keep that in mind, the flow of how the audience is going to come in and exit. Now, how about your virtual location checklist? So let's go through this because we're going to power through that. What about your software or the tool, the platform that you're using? Now, if you're using something like PowerPoint, that's really easy. But if you're using something that's actually been built on the cloud and you've got to be able to connect to that, you've got to make sure that that's going to work. and that the platform requirements are going to work and that you're familiar with that. Way back in the day, I actually had this whole thing built out on a platform that we couldn't access. It was in the cloud. We couldn't access it from the client because their firewall wouldn't allow them to get to it. I kid you not. So plan and make sure that those things are going to be working. And so, and then that includes if you're using the client's that position or yours, and understanding those platform requirements. Make sure that you test and rehearse any kind of handoff. So if you have someone who's sponsoring you for that event, you know, that they're going to hand over like the clicker, or they're going to hand over, you know, a mouse that's on a podium, whatever that happens to be. And you want to make sure that, once again, you're going to test that capability and connectivity so everything's working. And do you have the ability to set up early, right? So that you can come in and make sure everything's working, and whatever considerations you need for that specific space. Now let's shift to your audience checklist. Yep, you need an audience checklist. What are the number of attendees? Do you have the names and titles of the attendees, if applicable? So this is a great piece when you're making that proposal or presentation, or it's to a smaller group, knowing who's going to be in the room. And those names and titles of the decision makers and the influencers, stakeholders. What are their roles within the organization? Take time to research each attendee. And honestly, it is as simple as looking them up on LinkedIn and getting a little bit of background. People tell you about themselves in their about section. So be sure to identify and connect potential motivational synergies, you know, where you have things in common, so that you can really lean into that. Now, what about the plan for your presentation? So here are some items that you need to have on your checklist for the plan. Focus on your client perspective. Always. That is number one. Focus on your client perspective. Create your presentation outline, your client journey through the presentation, right? You're going to gather pertinent facts and figures. What's the planned interaction with the audience? And what is that going to be at the beginning, the middle, the end? What materials will you need? What is your special engagement ingredient? How are you going to really grip them, right? So include anticipating any scenarios, such as, you know, not having your presentation maybe not work, so that you're going to do it from your 3x5 cards without visuals, and map your response so you can really think through those things. And this includes answering questions and objections, right? So what are they going to ask you? And you want to be sure that you're able to bring the conversation back on point. Now you're ready to create your presentation, and you're going to start with the details you want to communicate. What is your client-focused content? How will you intersect engagement spots into that presentation? What stories are you going to use and where? Stories bring the audience in. They are so powerful because people can see themselves in your stories. What are the planned questions and discussion points? How are you going to transition to a minimal actionable commitment or next steps? I mean, they're sort of the same thing. What are you going to direct the audience to do next? Right? You're going to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. Now, if you're going to be using a slide deck, here's a few high-level considerations to add to that presentation checklist. So I was talking about the software that you're going to use and being familiar. This is not the time to try out something brand new, right? Not until you've practiced it in other settings. All right. What's your skill level with that? You know, are you comfortable with being able to make an edit that could be necessary on the fly? How is that slide deck going to work on site? Or what's the location feasibility? So those are the considerations. Do you have a design template? And what are your branding considerations? And finally, should you outsource the design? Now, next week, we're actually going to dig into the creation of the presentation slide deck. However, the checklist would not be complete without at least these 3 points. Be mindful to minimize text. You do not want people trying to read your slide deck, okay? It just should have really clean bullet points. And you want to use the minimum number of slides necessary, all right? Even for an hour presentation, 12 slides should be all you need. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use 15 or something like that, but do not go crazy, okay? If you got over 20 slides, unless you're doing something highly technical, why? And of course, gather appropriate images. All right. Now, a core part of planning and preparation, and this should be right in there on your checklist. Practice. Practice makes perfect. It includes content familiarity, rehearsal of the presentation elements, such as your special ingredient, right? So if you're going to introduce Play-Doh to the room, you need to have that rehearsed, you need to have it all planned, and you need to be able to do that easily and quickly. Now, what about role playing? That's an excellent way for you to practice potential objections and anticipated questions. You can do this with your family, your friends, your peers, your coworkers. Your posture, your body language, eye contact, and your smile, right? Your smile. So those should all be your part of your practice, your vocal volume, clarity, tone, and enthusiasm. And remember, your pace, it's not a race. You do have to be mindful of the time allotment. And that's a great way then to practice that pace. So when something gets thrown off and you discover you don't have 45 minutes, you actually have 20 minutes to do your presentation, you can sort of rapidly go through your presentation because you're so familiar with it. Discard that, I'll do this as you go through it, right? So those all help when you've practiced, right? It makes it so that in that moment, instead of being stressed, you go, I got this. And this is a really important point. Slides are not to be read, all right? Everybody in that room can read. Rather, those slides are those high-level elements. They're just bullet points with a couple of words that intrigue your audience, that they want more. So the great Vince Lombardi said that practice makes perfect. He's the one who actually coined that phrase. So rehearsing in front of an audience, even like I used to do with my dad, going into the library and checking out the conference room, it's really going to deliver a powerful benefit to your presentation performance. You're going to have a lot more confidence and assurance, and you're ready for the big day. And on the day of your presentation, your checklist is going to include to assemble the materials needed, audit your equipment required, make sure you've got everything. I already mentioned this, but be well rested. Make sure you've eaten recently, okay? Have a professional appearance. You got to look the part. But be comfortable in what you're wearing, okay? Don't wear attire that's just literally going to be constricting or you feel it's just not you, all right? That's being your authentic self. That includes those shoes. Please wear shoes that are comfortable, that you can walk across the stage without tipping over. Oh my goodness. So those are all considerations. You want to arrive early. So plan ahead, because it's much easier to be there and then, I'm here, I'm ready, I can go. So I already talked about being authentic. Now you're dressing and how you're presenting yourself will be positive. This is exciting, and be enthusiastic. You have incredible knowledge that you're going to be able to share to that audience. And I want you to visualize success. I want you to manifest it. Your audience is going to be so excited to hear what you have to share. They are there with you. The audience is there because they choose to be there. They want to be there. They want to hear you. They're excited for your presentation. And at the end of your presentation, express gratitude. Thank them for the opportunity and being such a wonderful audience. All right. So every great presentation is not complete without a planned follow-up strategy. The fortune is in the follow-up, right? So regardless of the type of presentation, a proposal, a meeting, a summit, a webinar, a panel, speaking from the stage, a keynote, you need a process to connect and drive the next steps in the sales journey. Now, that can include a final screen if you're doing a visual slide deck. It could even have a QR code that people could scan, right? It could have a very short, URL. So I use that pdq.link/win-win. So something that's really easy. But also, if you have a handout material, having something like that QR code so people can just scan, and it goes right to booking an appointment with you, brilliant. Or it goes right to your lead magnet, wonderful. And always remember, you need to include that minimal actionable commitment from the audience. You tell them what the next steps are. And then whatever your next steps are, you do what you say you will do, right? And you do it as promptly as possible. If you know that you're going to be traveling for several days, let the audience know that up front. For those of you who reach out to connect with me, I'll be traveling the next few days, so you can expect a response back starting on Thursday, right? So now you've set that expectation, you've let them know, you've communicated. With effective focus, planning, and preparation, you can deliver a powerful presentation that's going to move your audience while creating a positive impact for your business and reputation. Thank you so much for tuning in. My purpose is for you to get more clients. Bottom line, don't make this harder than it has to be. Sales should be a win-win. And on behalf of Petite Queen, I've carved out a limited number of time slots to invite you to hop on an Ignite Your Sales call with me to see what's working, not working, and what you would love to have working. I'm going to see how I might further support you in effectively generating more leads, converting more sales, and fulfilling on your promise as a brand and organization. The fastest way to success is to assure people know that they matter. And the best way to make this happen is to build a consistent sales strategy to acquire, convert, and capitalize on every lead. You will find growing your business is easy and lucrative. Today, I shared 8 must-haves to boost your confidence when presenting. The key is for you to implement these steps to stop wasting time, energy, and resources. You have the opportunity to jump in and get the support you need for true success. Say yes to you and get on a call with me. I'm truly gifted at this, and you deserve the shortcut to your success with the right support. Go to pdq.link/win-win. And if you're interested in our Get More Clients programs, they are designed for immediate on-the-fly implementations for individuals committed to taking action to move their business forward. And to learn more, you can visit our website at petitetoqueen.com. And you can also connect with me on our website and stay current on all of our insightful advice, our breakthrough advantages, and never miss an episode of Get More Clients. Go ahead and sign up for our weekly Wisdoms newsletter at petitetoqueen.com. Now, next week on Get More Clients, I will share what makes a huge hit talk with your special sauce. So I'm going to see you next week on Get More Clients.